Hey, Bobby Manning here. Celtics beat the Grizzlies and moved to 6-0 on this road trip. Something they've never done before.
I was surprised. They've never done it before in franchise history.
And Al Horford, a big reason tonight. Got a couple rest nights throughout this trip. We know that's part of the routine with him at this point through the regular season. And at this age, you expect some regression. You expect that he's going to keep taking a step back here. But then he has a performance like this. 26 points. Grizzlies, who infamously ignored Drew Holiday earlier in the schedule, did it to Horford tonight, and he hits them with 6 threes and a massive scoring performance that makes you wonder again, can this team rely on him if they need to here? And every time he's challenged to, it feels like he fires back with a yes.
Yeah, you want to follow like the logic, and the logic would say that a guy his age with that many miles, you don't want to lean on him too hard in the playoffs. But yeah, every time you see him play, he's able to do these things, especially in big moments. Tonight wasn't like the highest profile matchup against the best team in the league, but this was the best team they saw on this road trip. This was the only playoff team they saw on this road trip, and it's no coincidence that this was his best game, because his best games always align with the biggest moments. And whether it's the biggest playoff series or it's against the league's best post players, he steps up, and I think he took it a little personally that they were leaving him open, and he relishes that challenge. And honestly, I was surprised they chose him, because he's a pretty consistent three-point shooter for a while now, and he's pretty comfortable in that spot of being left open. He's not going to get in his head, because he is pretty used to it, but it didn't work for Memphis today. And early on, when other guys were struggling, Al really kept them in this one.
He keeps it short too when he talks about teams ignoring him. Here's his reaction to that game plan.
Did you have any idea their defensive scheme would leave you with so many open shots?
No.
What does that do for you when that does happen?
Well, I mean, I'm always just trying to make the right play, and the right play tonight was for me to shoot it, and if I don't have the shot, obviously find one of my teammates, but it was great.
So one thing about Al, he's fiery. Something like that's going to get him going. The moment's going to get him going too when the playoffs come around. And we threw it around on the show. Who would you want to be without if you had to pick someone in that starting lineup? And you and Jimmy made pretty good cases for Porzingis just because of the fact that Al seems so ready to step in, and that he did it a year ago here. And so you look at the starting lineups numbers, they've been way better with Al in there than Kristaps in there for some reason. I've tried to figure it out the last few weeks here, and I think it's mostly just the shooting against them and their own shooting combining to create that gap there. But I do think it says something about just how used to and well they're playing with Horford alongside Tatum and Brown and all these other guys that have been together for so long.
Yeah, I mean, the chemistry and the continuity with that group, like, we go back, sometimes you see clips of Jalen and Jason, in their rookie and sophomore years with Al Horford on the floor, right? And it kind of reminds you, like, this guy was integral in their development as people and as players, and Jason Tatum is the most vocal about it. But everybody talks about how he sets a culture and a certain standard, but I think it also extends onto the court. Tatum said in his walk-off interview today that when your oldest player is the one that has the most energy in the last game of a 6-game road trip, like, it inspires, and it does inspire at a certain level. And so we had really good seats in this game. We were able to see a lot of things that I don't think you always get to see from up high. And one of the things that I noticed is just how much of a leader he is in little moments, whether it's gesturing for Joe Mazzulla to call a timeout, whether it's de-escalating Kristaps Porzingis when he was about to get in a little bit of a tussle with John Morant. So it's just all the little things that he does. They don't always show up the way they did tonight on the stat sheet. Tonight it was both things. It was the intangibles that sometimes people miss, and it was also the box score impact. And he continues to be just integral for this team and also super dependable. He's really durable. I don't want to jinx it, but he does everything for them.
Yeah, and that shot making so important for him too. Because we've seen over this year, and you asked the question after the game about him moving closer to the basket. We saw that here. I think we've seen it throughout the road trip. And just finding ways to counteract the three-point decline a little bit. Because I think there's a reason teams are starting to ignore him more often. The Thunder did it in that game. He hit 6 threes against them too in that loss. So he's able to make teams pay. But if he is, let's say, 35-36 now from 3 rather than 42 like we saw a year ago and just deadly, he does need to get to some other areas. He does need to make himself a threat in more ways. And, even though the offensive numbers have dipped across the board this year, you do see the free throws going up a little bit. And he never goes to the free throw line anymore because he mostly just stands at the three-point line. So is there enough there that you can start to dream about him posting up, rolling, doing some stuff we just haven't seen from him over the last couple of years here?
Yeah, to be honest, when I asked Al about that, I thought that it was more like kind of remembering that he has these skills, and he, there's a reason why he was a two-time All-Star. And
There's no reason to just throw him away.
Yeah, it's not because he's a three-point shooter, right? He wasn't shooting threes when he was an All-Star. But he actually kind of explained that teams have been running him off the line, and I think some of his three-point decline is not just like variation or like he's having a bad shooting year. I think some of it is just that he is sometimes being guarded a lot more tightly. Teams are stronger and closing out on him because there's a body of work now that proves that he's a good shooter. And so most teams won't do what Memphis did tonight. But he said he's been kind of really prioritizing getting more comfortable driving to the basket, posting up. We've seen a variety of shots, whether it's hook shots or whatnot. And he credited assistant coach Tony Dobbins for kind of like pushing him to do that. But it's made the Celtics more dynamic. Same way when Drew Holiday's attacking the basket. Like, you don't want three of your starting players to just be spot-up shooters when they're capable of so much more than that. Just on nights when they have to do that so that it's not totally unfamiliar.
Yeah, and for Al, I think you're seeing that he's just in a place right now, and I mentioned the Fisher report too, that this isn't a minimum guy at this point. This is a guy that could go out and get $6 million offers this summer. This is a guy I don't think a lot of people have thought about going into free agency this summer, and how you're still in this place where you're really relying on him. Like, he's integral here, and as they start to make these maneuverings into the future here and make these decisions on the players, part of it might have to be with the thinking that we're actually going to have to pay Al here. And so I'm interested to see where this goes down the stretch here. Does he end up starting for them again in the playoffs because Porzingis can't go? Do they need to use him in double big and pull another guy out of there? That was a big part of the win today, I felt like, is them going to double big and get more stops. They've been better defensively when they've gone to that look. And then of course you have these outbursts from Al here. So we've said it over and over again. Doesn't feel like he's super important right now during the regular season, but I do think once we get to the playoffs, we're going to see a ton of Al, and that does raise some questions for this summer.
Yeah, I don't even know what to say of the summer, because they're in such a predicament where you wanted them to just keep everybody because everybody's so important. Luke Cornett and Al Horford are 2 free agents. A year ago, you might have thought, okay, those are not 2 of the most important players. Now, with the way the season's gone, like, you want to re-sign those guys, and obviously you can't sign everybody, but he's certainly gone from a guy who a year and a half ago people were saying if they win Banner 18, he's going to retire, which was never substantiated, but that's how a lot of people felt.
To a significant free agent?
To now, I think people are saying, he has a multi-year deal in him. And I talked to his mom earlier this season about just his career and his upbringing and everything. And one of the things she said to me that really stood out was she was like, he's not close. Like, he loves this game. Like, he has years left of basketball. That's how she feels. And I think she knows better than most fans at home, but that's what we're seeing based on his body language, based on his engagement, having his son around all the time. Like, he has this dynamic now where Ian is kind of shadowing him and being around the NBA life. Like, I think he has a couple good years left in him, and nights like tonight show you what that vision can look like at its best.
And they might both need each other at this point. Al is in a comfortable place in his career, and Celtics need him, so I'm sure there's some way they can get that done there, and he's willing to play another year beyond this one. I have to think it's going to be in Boston, but it is a real question now, given how well he's played, especially on the defensive end of the floor, and just made himself indispensable. And then you still have the offensive performances like these every so often, a major part of their win over the Grizzlies, and beating a defense that, again, tried to ignore a guy on the Celtics, and Holiday going off tonight too. Horford great in this one, and the Celtics win without Brown here in Memphis, beating the Grizzlies and tying the season series with them to end this road trip 6-0. Pretty crazy accomplishment on this road trip.
15 of 16 on the road.
Injuries, 15 of 16 you mentioned. No one can really put a finger on why they're so great on the road, but the wins just keep coming, and they'll head home for Miami on Wednesday. We'll have coverage of that here on CLNS Media and Celtics All Access for Noah Dalzell. I'm Bobby Manning with the last word here in Memphis.
CLNS Celtics coverage is powered by Prize Picks. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup.